Now let's talk about price floors. A price floor is the minimum legal price at which a good can be sold. Minimum wage is an example. In the labor market, employees are the sellers and employers are the buyers. Supply and demand analysis predicts that a price floor that is greater than the equivalent price has 7 effects. The predictable effects are: first, the market price is greater than the equivalent price. In this case, the price floor sets the price. Second, surpluses tend to occur and to persist. In a freely functioning market, the surplus would tend to cause price to decrease. However, the price floor prevents price from falling, therefore the surplus decreases. Number 3, the quantity traded tends to equal the quantity demanded. At the price floor, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. When the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded, every seller willing to sell cannot find a buyer willing to buy. Since sellers cannot force buyers to buy more than they want to buy, the sellers will sell only the quantity demanded, even though this amount is less than the quantity supplied. Number 4, the quantity traded tends to be less than the quantity traded in a freely functioning market. In a freely functioning market, the quantity traded tends to equal the quantity demanded at the equivalent price. When price is kept above the equivalent price by a price floor, the quantity traded tends to equal the quantity demanded at the price floor. The quantity demanded decreases as price increases from the equivalent price to the price floor. Number 5, alternative rationing devices emerged to ration the quantity traded among sellers. The price floor means that price cannot ration the quantity traded among sellers. Since the quantity demanded is less than the quantity supplied, every seller willing to sell cannot find a buyer willing to buy. When every seller cannot find a buyer willing to buy, buyers have greater discretion to pick the sellers from whom to buy and from whom not to buy. Not buying from a seller is not costly because a surplus exists. When a surplus exists, a buyer can easily find other buyers sufficient to sell all of the quantity the buyer wants to buy. Alternative rationing devices may include showing favoritism to friends, family, and people of influence, avoiding buying from people with characteristics the buyer finds undesirable. A gray market emerges in which price is below the legal price. Sellers are willing to accept less than the price when the quantity demanded is less than the quantity supplied. Sellers unable to sell all they want to sell at the price floor can earn more profit by selling illegally at lower prices. By selling illegally at lower prices, sellers can increase the amount sold. An example is sweatshops are farms that pay less than the minimum wage, even though they are required by law to pay minimum wage. Workers accept these low wages because the alternative is even worse. Another example is Uber. One reason that Uber is so successful is that regulations in many localities create price floors on fares that taxi cabs may charge. Producers develop the final effect is that producers will develop and use tactics that reduce the real price without reducing the posted price. Here's a couple of examples of tactics. Increasing the quality of the good. The federal regulations that created price floors for airlines also led airlines to compete by offering frequent flights, great meals, and attracted stewardesses. The term flight attendant did not exist. In fact, it was Brana advertised that they had their stewardesses in designer uniforms. Second, they can give the buyer discounts or easier access to other items that are not subject to price controls. An example of a price floor. The minimum wage is a good example. Of course, for the minimum wage to be binding, it must be greater than the equilibrium wage. So now the question is, where might the equilibrium wage be so low that it's less than $7.25? The answer is when labor is unskilled and plentiful relative to demand. The minimum wage is therefore more likely to be binding for young people than for middle-aged people. The equilibrium wage for young people tends to be lower than for middle-aged people because the young people lack the job skills and experience that middle-aged people have. The data on employment show that young people are more highly concentrated in low-wage jobs than the general population. The minimum wage for 2011 for all workers was $50,000. For people 15 to 24, the median was only $30,460. This difference suggests that the minimum wage is greater than the equilibrium wage more frequently for young people than for the general population. If the suggestion that the minimum wage is greater than the equilibrium wage more frequently for young people than the general population is correct, supply and demand predicts that the quantity demanded is less than the quantity supplied for many young people. One signal that the quantity demanded is less than the quantity supplied for labor is a high rate of unemployment. Data on unemployment rates is consistent with this signal. In 2013, the unemployment rate in the U.S. was 7.4%. For people aged 16 to 19, on the other hand, it was 22.9%, 3 times higher. The minimum wage is also more likely to be binding for black people than for white people. The data on unemployment show that black people are more highly concentrated in low-wage jobs than white people. In 2011, median income for white people was $52,000. For black people, it was $32,000. The difference suggests that the minimum wage is greater than the equilibrium wage more frequently for black people than for white people. If the suggestion is true, we would expect that the unemployment rate for black people will be higher than the unemployment rate for white people. The data is consistent with that prediction. In 2013, the unemployment rate in the U.S. for white people was 6.5%. For black people, it was 13.1%, twice as high. What if you combine what we say about young people and black people? Who's really in trouble as far as unemployment, as far as employment goes? It's going to be young black people. The median income for 2011 for black workers aged 15 to 24 was only $20,000. This suggests that a lot of them are concentrated in low-income, minimum wage type jobs. Their unemployment rate was 38.8%. The unemployment rate for black workers aged 15 to 24 was 38.8%. Now, 2013 was not a great year for the economy. Wasn't terrible, it wasn't a good one, but 38.8%, that's a really high unemployment rate. Now, who wins and who loses when the minimum wage increases? The big winners are the workers whose wages increase to the new minimum. Of course, their gain may be reduced by employers who reduce benefits. Reducing benefits, less vacation, greater share of health insurance paid by employee, etc., allows employees to decrease legally the net compensation paid to workers. Another winner are workers who earn more than minimum wage and compete with minimum wage workers. Milton Friedman argued that self-interest motivates the support by labor and trade unions for increases in the minimum wage. The wages of these unions are well above the minimum wage. However, as the minimum wage increases, the wages paid to low-skilled workers increases, thereby increasing the demand for and wages paid to highly skilled union workers. The big losers are people who would find employment at the equilibrium wage and cannot find employment at the minimum wage. Milton Friedman argued that the minimum wage often hurts the very groups that people with good intentions are trying to help. Since the minimum wage affects most directly groups that tend to earn wages at or near the minimum wage, they are affected most directly by increasing the minimum wage. The people affected most directly are the least skilled workers.